In today's video, we're discussing information that was discussed on Saturday headlines on Hockey Night in Canada with Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnson. In this update, we had some pretty big updates on the Taylor Hall situation with the New Jersey Devils, as well will a Hall Marner injury that had occurred last night complicate the Leafs roster decisions moving forward, with Zach Hyman set to return here shortly. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some very interesting information to discuss here today. And I want to kick things off with the Taylor Hall situation in the New Jersey Devils and whether or not he's going to be able to re-sign a long-term deal in New Jersey. Will he be traded or will he possibly hit free agency next summer as well? You're definitely going to want to stick around for this update because it does provide a lot of insight as to what might actually happen here. I mentioned in a previous video, there was reports that Taylor Hall's agent, Darren Ferris and Ray Shero recently met in Calgary. There really wasn't a whole lot of updates that came from that, but Elliot Friedman was discussing the fact of what we normally see out of Darren Ferris and his agency and their clients and how things normally go, which is kind of a lot what we saw with the Mitch Marner Toronto Maple Leaf negotiations of this past summer. As a prime example, Darren Ferris typically instructs his clients to kind of wait to sign as late as possible because he feels the longer they wait, they'll get the true best offer, let the market set itself to really make sure they maximize their offer and their earnings for the contract moving forward. So if that is the case, then it's very, very unlikely that Taylor Hall would end up signing an extension with New Jersey sometime during the season. So if they don't sign him during the season, of course, we enter the offseason, and that very well could put them at risk to lose him as a free agent like we saw with the New York Islanders and John Tavares not all that long ago. We've also seen comments from before from Taylor Hall indicating that he monitored that John Tavares situation very closely and was very intrigued by how it all played out. So I could certainly see if he does hit free agency, taking a similar approach, talking to certain teams, inviting them for a meeting, and kind of having the teams come to him like we saw with JT the 2 summers that passed. So I guess it'll be very interesting to see if he does end up hitting free agency because I do think the odds are pretty good. So ultimately that means that the ball is in the Devils' court here. So they can either choose to let this play out or they can choose to trade him. Obviously, their season is not going very well. We've seen numerous comments from Hall in the media a couple times recently. One talking about how the fans were booing the team, and he didn't really feel it was justified. He felt it was hard to play through because at the time when the booing was taking place, that the team wasn't doing as bad. They could be winning a game. The power play, might be actually having a decent game, even though they might not having a decent segment or whatever they were booing at. Either way, he just found it difficult to deal with. And we've also seen him comment again during their recent trip to Edmonton. He was asked point blank if he would consider a return to the Oilers should he hit unrestricted free agency next summer. And he didn't really get into that detail, saying that, that he would definitely want to or not go back to Edmonton. But at the same time, he did say that if he hits free agency, that essentially all teams would be kind of factored in and he would look at all situations. And ultimately, his big thing is he wants to be a playoff contender year after year after year. At this stage of his career, he's only had an opportunity to win one playoff game, made the playoff on one occasion, and that's not what he's looking for. He wants to be with the team ultimately that's consistent and has a chance to make the playoffs and a chance to contend, consistently. And obviously, he could be a big part of that for the duration of a long-term contract. So ultimately, I guess we'll see what the Devils do. Now, there's been a lot of talk about if they do trade him, where would he go? There's been some other recent articles here on Sportsnet kind of talking about that situation, rattling off about 6 or 7 teams that they felt were good landing spots. Some of those spots include the Colorado Avalanche. There's talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins, the San Jose Sharks, as well as some Canadian Western teams, including the Calgary Flames, Edmonton Oilers, and Vancouver Canucks. Now, if you take a look at all these different teams, I think there's probably fair to say that depending on if they were to acquire him as a trade or a free agent, that the teams would really have different odds. Some of these teams just don't have the assets, I don't think, that are necessary. They'd have to give up too much for a potential playoff run and not be guaranteed to re-sign him. So I do think it's quite possible that field will be narrowed down quite a bit. Now, personally, I've mentioned before that I felt the Colorado Avalanche were an ideal landing spot. They're very well positioned with tons of assets and tons of cap space, but would they go ahead and give up the necessary assets to acquire him without having a long-term contract already worked out and having that, that security to know that he's going to be sticking around for an extended period of time? I mean, if these teams feel like he's likely going to go to free agency anyway, they may not want to pay that big asking price, which may, cause the deal not to take place, or very well might cause the Devils to not get anywhere near the return that they're thinking that they might if they do go down that road. But personally, like I said, with the Avalanche and their situation, they've got the picks, they've got the assets and prospects, they've got some roster players. Colorado Hockey Now author Adrian Dater indicates that he felt maybe a package of some younger players like Tyson Jost, JT Compher, maybe Nikita Zadorov and a first-round pick or something to that effect might be enough to actually get the deal done, and it probably would be. That would really be a big help to the Devils roster moving forward. A couple of young forwards, a good, big-size physical D, as well as another pick for the upcoming draft. If the Devils end up being a lottery team again, which is looking like they will be, they very well could have multiple picks in that top 15, which would certainly go a long ways to helping them continue building for the future as well. So certainly an interesting situation. Is going to see how this plays out. But based on what Friedman was saying, it sounds very unlikely we're going to see Hall sign an extension anytime during the season. So we just have to wait and see if Ratio is going to go down the road here of making a big trade, or is he going to go down the road like the Islanders did and take the chance and potentially lose his star player on his team? So I guess we'll wait and see. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Is Taylor Hall going to be moved by the New Jersey Devils, or will they let this play out and take their chances in free agency next year? Now, we've also talked plenty lately about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their impending decisions that they're going to have to make here on the roster as Zach Hyman gets set to return from long-term injury reserve to make his season debut. There's been lots of talk about Jason Spezza being the odd man out. We've already seen the Maple Leafs put Patan and Marincin through the waiver wire. They both cleared, so obviously there's a couple of spots that are cleared up, but obviously that's not quite enough salary cap space to bring Hyman into the fold. So obviously one more forward likely needs to go. Obviously it's between Spezza, Shore, and Timashov, but Spezza's been the healthy scratch for the past 3 games. The game before that when he was in, I thought he had a really good game, scored a goal, scored a shootout winner, and really hasn't been able to get into the lineup ever since, which is kind of baffling. I do have some concerns over Babcock's usage of him. Same thing with Tyson Barrie. Not really quite clear on why he's being utilized the way they are, but that's a topic for a different day, I guess. But in Jason Spezza's case, though, there's been talk that Kyle Dubas and Babcock both have had constant dialogue with him throughout the entire process. Still doesn't mean he's completely satisfied and happy with everything. I'm sure he did not sign with the Leafs to be in the press box and be a healthy scratch so often. Obviously, he hasn't really made it into the lineup a lot so far this season. But of course, last night's game certainly might have changed things here yet again. A whole different dynamic came into play. It does look as though Mitch Marner seriously injured himself and could possibly be out for an extended period of time. And as much as the Leafs don't want Marner to be injured and out of the lineup, it could buy them some more time to kind of make some longer term roster decisions here and see how everything plays out. Now, of course, in Marner's situation, he fell very awkwardly. It looks as though it likely is an ankle and or knee injury, possibly even a bit of both. All we know so far is that he's not going to be playing today. They do have another game today, which he has been ruled out for. Beyond that, we don't have any further updates on Marner at this time, but it did look to be relatively serious. He did try to come back and play, but really couldn't put a whole lot of weight and was not getting around the ice very well at all. So it is definitely fair to say he's going to end up on injury reserve, but how long exactly is unclear at this point in time. Now, of course, for them to get salary cap relief, he'd have to go on long-term injury reserve, and to be on long-term injury reserve, you have to be out for about 24 days. So obviously, they have to be sure that he's going to be out for that period of time before they go ahead and make a move like that. So it's going to make them difficult, and they don't really have the flexibility to be bringing in other players, etc. here. So Spezza likely is going to get a chance to play, at least on a short-term basis, while Marner's being evaluated. Like I said, it's certainly going to be buying them some time before they have to make further decisions. They were at a point for the first time in the season where they seem to be content that they're actually going to have their full, regular, healthy lineup in place, and that before they really made too many decisions on trades or anything of that nature, anything significant, that they want to evaluate that full healthy roster for at least a good stretch of time before they made any additional long-term choices. Because it has been rumored that the Leafs have been getting a lot of calls about making some more significant trades and asking if they're going to be moving a more significant salary off their roster. I mean, there's been some talk about, maybe like a William Nylander, Kasper Kamp, and Andreas Janssen. Not to say that any of those players really at this point make sense for them to trade, but obviously with their cap situation and the lack of flexibility that they have, other teams are kind of just wondering if a more significant move might be coming from the Maple Leafs to give them that flexibility. And I guess they were all kind of told basically that not right now, to kind of hold off, that that they want to evaluate a full healthy roster before they make anything significant or even go down that road at all. So many believe that another roster move, like I said, with Jason Spezza being on waivers or possibly being traded, likely would be the result here to get Hyman back. But so now this whole Marner injury kind of complicates things further. So I guess for right now, we're likely going to be seeing the Leafs kind of hold steady would be my guess. But for them to really get any cap relief, I guess we're going to have to wait and see if Marner would end up being out long enough for long-term injury reserve to relief to be used in his situation to give them a little bit more flexibility. So let me know what you think. Do you still feel Jason Spezza is going to be the odd man out? Or if he gets a chance to play during Marner's injury here and actually performs quite well, could that change the dynamic? And what will the Leafs do once they actually do have a full, healthy roster and complement of players at their disposal? So that is your latest news updates for today. Of course, as always, as I mentioned before, I want all your thoughts and opinions and everything we discussed here today. So let me know what you think down in the comments section and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching and I will catch you next time.